was just saying. Tell her the phrase you were just saying.
Well, they already heard it once. But no, in fact, and it's not even my saying it. I think it was someone else here at Atlanta Live, but saying, that we're always coming in or going from or in the middle of a storm. You know, and just as Dr. Cooper said, you know, having those times of peace and those times when there is a lot of a lot of good things going on. You know, you should be prepared that there is something in the future. You know?
Well, and that's why I think it's so important to have an ongoing relationship with Christ and read the Bible daily and have the Christian community around you so that you're always, you know, putting His message in you so you're prepared and that you have, you know, all that knowledge so when the next storm hits,
you can pull down those scriptures.
You know what to pull from. Because if you're not prepared, you know, like I wasn't. You know, you're just decimated. You just have nothing to pull from.
And on that, let's rewind to that first storm now. When your father died, and now you weren't in. He was in Atlanta, right? Your parents, or
he was in Richmond.
At
the time.
All right, and was it? I can't remember if you glazed over it or not. Was it sudden? Was it? How did he die?
He was diagnosed with stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in September of 2000. And at the time they said, this is the kind of cancer you want to have, 80% remission rate after 5 years, do chemotherapy. I mean, very optimistic. And he started doing the chemotherapy after about 4 sessions of it. And he ended up, you know, getting a couple of different second opinions. And he had a great doctor. And then he ended up going to Georgetown to get some other second opinions. And a stem cell transplant doctor said, you know, your treatment's not working. And he had no idea it wasn't working. And he ended up having to have a stem cell transplant, you know, kind of out of the blue. And that didn't work. And he ended up going to MD Anderson Hospital for a clinical trial and passed away in hospice in Houston. So 11 months later after diagnosis.
So it was almost a year. And from a type of cancer where they said don't even worry, you know, there's not too much need.
Right. So it was really unexpected from the beginning. I mean, you know, it's interesting, like writing the book, because, you know, you go through the denial of maybe, did I hear that? Did I not want to hear? Whatever. But it really was from the beginning, you know, this is the kind of cancer you want to have. I mean, that was said to us, you know, and our expectations from the beginning was, you know, he's probably going to be okay.
And I had, you know, my father was diagnosed with cancer when I was in college, and they only gave him 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, the typical diagnosis. And my mom never told him. And it's been 15. So with cancer, you just never know.
You don't.
And then you're not prepared. I don't think anything can prepare you. I don't care if you're told, okay, you have 2 weeks, and another guest was talking about that. Nothing can prepare you. And you don't even know how you're going to respond to a death. You really don't. And
well, and you know, my parents had all the paperwork, the estate paperwork ready. But really, it's all the other stuff that you don't think about. You know, it's going to be like, who's going to jump into, you know, the different roles that my father played in their marriage, you know, and in the roles that he took on, the financial roles, and the changes in the family dynamics, and what do you do with holidays, and all the other stuff
that you typically
that comes along.
You know, it's amazing to me. I've told you, or told both of you, that, you know, I've lost both of my parents. And one thing is that you can, you know, I think, thankfully, with Christ in our lives, you can prepare for death, but you can't prepare for the survivors of the family, because there's so many questions that you don't even know what to ask until you're in the middle of it. And you go, what do I do now? From everything of, you know, I know my mother struggled when my dad died he handled the finances. He did everything. He balanced the checkbook and all that. So it's like, you know, that little thing that you never once think about. Okay, what, you know, and So, are you an only child, or?
I have a sister.
Okay. Okay.
I have a sister, but what we found out with our situation was, all of a sudden the situation is in your lap, and you have your own life to manage, and now all of a sudden you got to figure out all these other things, and where do you start? I mean, there's all these great grief and loss resources out there, I found out, but they weren't very well organized, and you don't really know what's trustworthy and what's not, and what's the best one. I found that you wanted a Consumer Reports guide to what are the best ones to start with. And that's kind of what I wanted to pull together is a starting point for people, of where do you find a parent loss support group? I didn't even know those existed.
Right, exactly.
And there's like young widow support groups, for different age groups, and there's widower support groups, and where do you begin to find these things? And there's online support groups. I was at MD Anderson away from where I lived, and if I'd known that there was great online support that are actually monitored by like traumatologists, where they check people out, I would have gone online where they have parent loss forums. That are monitored.
And so what you're really realizing is that you're in this situation, you have all these questions come up, what am I going to do for this and this and this and all these things that you'd never in a possible million years think of because you're not in the situation, and you're having to decide, hoping and wishing that there were support groups, and how do I go from A to B on death and funeral, basically.
And I was 30.
Wow.
I had never experienced that,
Yes.
And, I'm sure what I love is that any situation that someone's in, someone else is also in that same situation. You're not in that ship alone. We've all experienced it, and I feel like either we've all experienced it or we're all gonna experience it.